It's time to dive in those earnings. Meta, Snap, are you using both? Let's talk to our panel. Logan Gillen's here, analyst at Jewel Financial, and also Kendra Parmer is here, editor at Compiler. Thank you both for being with us. So Kendra, I'll start with you. Some of your thoughts on Meta's report.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about some of the things that everybody's talking about, and we can talk about some of the things that I've noticed. But overall, I think the top line notes are we've had stronger than expected earnings at Meta. A lot of that has been driven by its core advertising business. But the company has said and emphasized that it is going to be spending a lot of money on AI over the next few years. And investors are at this point, can we say they're spooked about it? Maybe pun intended, but I'm not too sure yet. I think people are waiting and watching and seeing if, this AI bet is going to pay off, so to speak.
Yeah, and look, on the last quarter, remember everybody was like walloped by the spending they were doing on AI. They couldn't believe it, only to see the rest of the other names doing much of the same spending on AI. But Meta came out first with the big spend, and it seemed so astronomically high, but then it seemed somewhat more in line when we started to hear from the other companies. Logan, what do you say about what they plan to spend and the outlook? I mean, there were some bright spots, right? And also, there are folks who think that this reaction and this sell-off of 4.5% is actually the buying opportunity, that it shouldn't be selling off.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of good things in this report. The underlying message was that they beat revenue and earnings. They beat on both top and bottom line, but they did have that expensive spend. Although Zuckerberg came out and said, hey, we're spending more on AI because we're executing really well on developing the AI space. Now, I think kind of mega caps across the board are due a little bit for a pullback and are due for maybe an extended pullback, not just today necessarily in Meta. So I wouldn't be a buyer here necessarily because it's up 60% this year. And we're going to talk about Snap in a minute. There's a difference that's going on between some of these mega cap names that have ran so much. The bar is set sky high for those. And then some of these ones that haven't performed as well, the bar is much, much lower. So I think investors were pricing in basically perfection on this report. So seeing not only that there was a little bit more AI spend than what they were expecting, and that there could potentially be a little bit lower on the daily active users than what they were expecting or what they were forecasting. I think that factored into the move we're seeing today. But again, I think it's more so just the perfection that was baked in. Longer term, I think Meta is going to be completely fine. They're still hitting a lot of their numbers, and they're doing this part on investment for AI and for what the future can look like for their business.
Yeah, and look, I mean, they had record revenue, slower digital ad growth, but they did have some bright spots, and the spending is because they're seeing the momentum. But, there are folks who are worried about how much spending they're doing. How about Snap? Let's talk a little bit about that. Kendra, what were your thoughts on Snap?
Yeah, I mean, Snap is in the opposite of direction of Meta. It's a much smaller company, but it seems to be doing okay. I think there's a larger question on Snap's future, whether it has the audience and the engagement that can, have it compete with the larger sort of social media tech companies. The audience for Snap is very different from the audience for Meta, and you can say it's a much more difficult audience to monetize. So you kind of see that in the numbers itself. Whether or not Snap's AI and investments are going to pay off in terms of their augmented reality stuff, I think that's all too close to too soon to really call it at this point.
There's a lot of hopes. The simple Snap ad redesign, I was reading that in promoted places, these types of things drive improvements and actually drive advertiser reach and appeal. So there were some bright spots here. Boost from AI, boost in paid subscribers. So big picture, there were a lot of things to like about Snap. Logan, were you more worried about it or like what you saw?
I mean, you like what you see in comparison. You have to look at the price action. Obviously, Snap's been down 20% this year. It's been one of the big laggards in kind of this social media space. So it having a nice boost, a nice report. I mean, they definitely beat on their earnings numbers, were several cents above what the expectation was. And they did have some bright spots of some things that they're doing well. I think ultimately when we're talking about these two in the same realm, it's very difficult to do so because Snap is this small player in the field compared to Meta and in the huge conglomerate that it is. I think the big thing that I look at when I'm evaluating the two companies is Meta has $50 billion in cash on the balance sheet. Snap has $2 billion. So obviously there's different sizes of companies and the market value shows that. Right. But still, when you're looking at these two companies, who's going to win in this AI race and who's going to win in that ad spend category that is so precious to both of these companies, I think you got to look at Meta as the long-term winner. But again, I think these mega cap names need some time to digest and pull back a little bit because they've just been exceptionally good this year. Investors have been factoring in perfection. Some of these underlying things, I think it's kind of a forecast for the overall market. Maybe some of the small caps get some love while the mega caps do a little bit of a pullback.
Yeah, and I know Cantor was actually saying on Snap, look, there's some challenges that remain, right? Nothing is just smooth sailing. Logan Gilland and Takendra Parmar, thank you very much. Great to see you both. Really appreciate it. Folks, make sure you keep it here. We have lots of earnings for you today after the bell.